y'all. It is hashtag Tablespoon Tuesday once again, where we take a deeper dive into what was on the blog this week. And this week, I gotta tell you, it was hard because number one, I had a completely different theme planned. So I kind of had to pivot with everything that has been happening. I felt like I should talk about it a little bit, not to induce fear or panic or anything like that, but just because this kind of plays into something that I've struggled with for a really long time, and that is the issue of control and randomness, and how it's a huge fear of mine. And it's something that I've had to work through for a really long time, because after the loss of 3 babies with no explanation for a long time, and then the loss of a baby to a cord accident the day before he was supposed to be born, I have felt that it's likely that I'm going to lose someone else in my life to something random, to something that I can't control. And I'm a big one on control. Love me some control. So I've talked about before, I'm a very risk averse person. I don't go skydiving. I don't go bungee jumping. I don't, skateboard. I don't do things like that just because I'm a very risk averse person. But it got a lot worse after Caleb died. And so this week we kind of talked about, my blog post was called Hope Floats, which P.S. is one of my favorite movies. But it was all about holding on to hope when things feel super scary and out of control. So first I'll start by saying that hope was a really hard word for me for a really long time, especially in the beginning stages of grief after the loss of my babes. When people would say the word hope to me, I'm just like, how can I possibly have hope? Like, let's just be real, like real talk. How do I have hope? How do I have hope right now when I have lost my babies and I don't know if I'm ever going to have living children? I don't know if my marriage can survive. I don't know if my body's broken. I don't know. There's so many unknowns, and the I don't knows tend to swirl in me like a tornado. I don't do well with I don't knows. I need like concrete information, and I had a lot of I don't knows. So I became myopically focused on my husband and his safety. And, I'm sure he was kind of in the beginning like, oh, that's, so sweet. She loves me. She's worried about me, what have you. But it very quickly devolved into, I was basically suffocating him. I was suffocating him because I was always like, where are you? What's happening? Text me when you leave. Text me when you arrive. Text me. If I don't hear from you, I'm going to assume you're dead on the side of the road, and I'm going to call all the hospitals. And, he started hiding things from me as far as, like, he worked in downtown Denver at the time, and downtown Denver is a really safe place in a lot of ways, but it can get a little rugged sometimes, like a lot of metropolitan cities. And my husband ran a bar in downtown Denver, and there were different things that were happening, like people attacking different people or what have you, like a block from his bar or across the street from his bar. And he deliberately didn't tell me because he knew that my suffocation was gonna go to a whole new level. Like, I was gonna wrap him in bubble wrap and he was never gonna be out of my sight again. And because I wholly believed that I could keep him safe, which, that's a delusional way of thinking. But at the time I totally thought, like, as long as he's with me, he's in front of me, I can see him, he's gonna be okay. Everything's fine. So he was kind of forced to go underground with some stuff and not talk to me about what was happening, which is never a good thing if you aren't able to communicate in your marriage. And so it just so happened I saw it on the news and I lost it. I went bananas on him and I was like, did you know this was happening? And he's all like, I mean, yeah, I knew. I mean, I may have talked to some of the police officers around that are off duty and help us, and they might have filled me in on some things and what have you. And I was devastated because we talked to each other about everything, but the fact that he wasn't talking to me about it just goes to show how insane I had become. And so that anxiety of not being able to have control over his well-being, of him coming home at 3 o'clock in the morning and a drunk driver maybe hurting him, like hitting him, or and killing him, or someone coming after hours that he had kicked out of the bar because they were too drunk or what have you, coming back and attacking him. Like, these are the scenarios that played in my head all the time. So I wasn't sleeping well. His job gave me even more massive anxiety, which is silly because he'd had this job forever. But it was something that I couldn't let go of. So I had to do a couple things. I had to go to therapy. I had to go on some anxiety medication. It was for depression and anxiety because I had extreme of both. And then I had to do a lot of grief work, a lot of intentionality, and figuring out ways to kind of ground myself in hope. And so, that was 9 years ago, right? Like, this is 9, 10 years ago. This is, our MySpace pages were still active at that time. I mean, I don't know if any of you even know what that is anymore, but we had MySpace at the time, I think, still. So now with the just massive amounts of social media that are out there, it's even worse, just because you're inundated constantly with information, with misinformation, with good information, wading through everybody else's fears, and clinging on to hope is a lot harder, I feel like. And for me, all of this information is very overwhelming. It causes my head to spin. It causes me to ask 8 billion questions about the fact that I need concrete answers to things that, unfortunately, right now, we don't have answers to. And I find that to be scary. I find that to be something that I struggle with. And so I have a tendency to dress rehearse tragedy and play the movie to the end, but at the worst possible ending, not the like, well, what if everything turns out great in the end? Like, I'm like, no, it's going to be, the worst case scenario. So I wanted to talk a little bit about today about how to stay grounded in hope. And this is stuff that I'm practicing in real time because I'm not an expert at this. My default is to spin. My default is to have anxiety. My default is to completely freak out and make everyone I love be right in front of me at all times so I can see them and nothing bad can ever happen. So the first way I'm working on through this is staying in my routine. So I get up between 4:30 and 5 every day, and I do a lot of things. I have something called the Start Today morning practice that I do that I learned from Rachel Hollis. If you guys don't know Rachel Hollis, you should know Rachel Hollis. She's awesome. But I write down 5 things that I'm grateful for. I write down my 5 to thrive, which, again, if you go check out Rachel Hollis, she can school you on the 5 to thrive. I write down how I'm going to show up that day. So I pick words like joyful, grateful, humble, things like that. I write down my 10 goals that I have for myself. I write them down every single day, but I write them as if they've already happened. I write down how I'm going to nourish myself in a variety of words. So every year I come up with a different word, and how I'm going to take on that year. So last year's word was nourish. That was my 2019 word, and I didn't feel like I wanted to let go of that, so I've included it in my routine even in 2020. And so I figure out how I'm going to nourish myself physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually every single day. I then write down how I'm going to be intentional for that day because I couldn't decide between my 2 final words for 2020. So my 2 words are intention and relentless. Those are the 2 words that I have kind of leaned my 2020 on this year. So I write down how I'm going to be intentional, how I'm going to be relentless. I come up with a quote for the day that I really like. And then I write down a Bible verse that I'm going to hold on to for that day. So sticking with your routine, doing 30 minutes of exercise is part of that routine, it's mostly just taking a walk. And so right now I have my kids along with me now instead of the fact that I usually go by myself. I get outdoors. That's a big one for me. Drinking water, moving my body, just being outside, breathing, being around the sunshine. We're here in Colorado. We're supposed to get snow again later on this week, and February was just rough with snow. Can I get a witness? Oh my gosh, it was crazy. And I love snow. Like, don't get me wrong, I love me some snow, but I was ready for some sunshine. So we've had gorgeous weather for the last couple weeks. I'm so grateful for that. It has made my gratitude list more times than I can count. And so I'm trying to soak all of that up as much as humanly possible. I'm starting to be more careful about what I'm consuming, social media wise, just media wise in general, because that definitely starts messing with your head. So I think it's important to be informed. I'm not wanting to not read the news or what have you, but I'm trying to really pare down how much I'm looking at social media and media, just because it makes me start spinning. It makes me start questioning. It makes me feel like I'm starting to lose it, and I'm not able to be grounded in hope. So I'm kind of cultivating what I'm consuming. And then I'm trying to find ways to find joy every day. And so the thing my mother always taught me was that joy is irrespective of your circumstance. And so you can find joy every day. So for me, joy comes with reading. It comes from drinking a cup of coffee while it's still hot and I don't have tiny humans asking me a million questions or demanding my attention. It could be watching trash TV. I love me some trash TV. So, whether that's a Real Housewives or a Kardashians or what have you, just something to take your mind off of it. That's so far beyond what we're dealing with in real time right now. I gave myself a pedicure the other day. Can I just tell you? I didn't even think I remembered how to do that because I'm ridiculously spoiled and have gone to the nail shop forever. So I gave myself a pedicure the other day, and that was very grounding, and it felt really fantastic. So, and then the last thing I've been doing is really just leaning on my people, whether it is my girlfriends virtually, whether it's, I talk to my sister, who's one of my best friends, multiple times a day, leaning on my husband, leaning on my parents, my in-laws, my nearest and dearest. I'm leaning on my people, and if I'm feeling scared at that time, chances are they might be feeling scared, but maybe not quite as scared as me or quite as anxious. And so they're able to kind of talk me down off the ledge, and then vice versa. If they're starting to spin and start getting upset, I'm able to reciprocate that. So I know hope is hard sometimes when we're going through this massive amount of uncertainty that people are losing their jobs by the millions, and things are scary right now. But at the same time, we just kind of like what we talked about with in my blog, with just give hope a chance to float up, and it will. And I'm praying for all of us, and just wanted you guys to know that you're loved, and I'm thinking of everyone. And if you guys have a cool way that you're holding on to hope or finding ways to ground yourself, I'd love to hear them. So comment. We'll talk to you next week.